go. No, we'll get started. So thank you for coming and creating an audience for us. So it's Maggie and myself, and also two colleagues who are not here today. Ahmed Halil, who is a co-researcher and also a participant in the Kara Syria program, who works in translation and Arabic education at Selçuk, and Michael, who was until very recently the chair of the EAP steering group for Kara Syria. Okay. So just to give a little bit of background, Kara stands for the Council for At-Risk Academics. The Kara Syria program is an in-country program. There's been two previous in-country programs, Kara Iraq and Kara Zimbabwe. And a priority objective of Kara Syria is facilitating international research collaborations and facilitating publication and output from research for the participants. Maggie and myself are part of the EAP strand, and in terms of what we're looking at today, we independently as the EAP strand and also in collaboration with colleagues in the academic development strand help participants with the various stages of their research writing journey. And this is a little bit of information about the Kara research grants. There's been quite a few rounds of them now. The Kara program started in 2017, so it's a competitive scheme and it comes round every 6 months. There's a particular Kara proposal form that they have to fill in that is not exactly the same but shares features of any kind of research or research grant proposal. And what we've managed to look at so far are the summaries, the 500-word summaries of these proposals. And the research that we're doing is very much pedagogically motivated. The first priority in terms of the outcome of what we're doing is pedagogic interventions in terms of supporting participants on the Kara Syria program. So I'm going to hand over to Maggie.
Okay, so these are the learners. They're exiled Syrian academics. They're mostly based in, please come in, we're not at all scary. Mostly based in Turkey. The English levels are very various, so B2 to C1. And there's a wide range of disciplines, so agriculture, engineering, sociology, archaeology, Islamic studies, and so on. And this was really what we were faced with. So they asked me, it was me, I think initially, oh, can you do a session on proposal writing? And what's behind that is that there were a lot of proposals, so that they had a certain pot of money, but couldn't get proposals of high enough quality to actually fund the research. And the Syrian participants just have very, very little experience of applying for research grants. So there's this need to teach proposal writing. But first of all, they're an occluded genre. It's really hard to get hold of examples, okay? No, as far as I could find, no available teaching materials. And very difficult to get suitable examples off the internet as well. So you would think they would be there, but they're really not suitable, and maybe not academic and so on. And the texts in other genres, there's not much point in using a research article if what you're trying to teach is a proposal summary, or an abstract. I suppose that would be the closest genre, but it's still very different. So I'm a corpus linguist, and it seemed obvious to me that what you had to do was to build a corpus of the participants' proposals. So this was what we started to do. And we got 32 proposals. 12 of these have been funded, 20 unfunded. So you can see the sort of discrepancy that you're looking at. It's actually not too dissimilar from what you get when you apply for research funding. Okay, so it's very small corpus, so that's 12,000 odd tokens, divided then into funded and unfunded texts. Because what I wanted to see, what I thought I was going to see very clearly, was I was hoping there were going to be linguistic differences I could put my finger on for teaching purposes and say, you know, if you do it like this, you're more likely to get funding. And that was software we used, so AntConc, very sort of well-known open source corpus software. So our two research questions. First of all, what is the generic structure of these learner summaries? And there's actually not a lot of literature on summary writing at all. I'll come on to that in a minute. And what are the differences, if there are any, between the unfunded and funded summaries? So looking at the literature then, as I say, there isn't an awful lot of it. The closest that we could come to what we needed was Feng and Shi, and they did a genre analysis of research grant proposals. And what we did was we took theirs and we have modified it slightly, because we've now done, in fact, 2 lots of genre analysis. Okay, so the first, if you're familiar with Swalesian introductions, the first move 1 will look very familiar. So establishing a real world or research territory, reporting on previous research, and indicating a niche, a problem, a gap, potential for further research. Then describing how to meet the research need, presenting the current research, describing methods and materials, and then move 3. And this is perhaps where it starts to really differentiate from the abstract. So indicating the importance of the research, future research outcomes and outputs, future real-world benefits, establishing team competence, okay, so we can do this stuff, guys, and alignment with CARA aims. And those last 2 were not very frequently used, in fact. Okay, and the colours are because it can then look like that to us. And this actually, it's good for showing to students, and it's also good for us as we were discussing it, because it became it's a very visual way of showing the genre analysis. So this is actually an unfunded summary, okay, but it does show you the moves and steps. So here's the first, the territory or background. Water is important as the main reason for the existence of life, and so it goes on. Okay, here's the niche. Led to the emergence of a, I think that's a problem, is it? A real crisis, yeah, in the securing water for drinking. And then here's the presentation of the research. It'll answer the following main questions. Here's the methodology. We'll divide the research into 2 parts, and it's quite nicely structured, this one, so I'll show you some problems later, but this one we could show you and say, yeah, we're fairly confident about our analysis here. The importance of the research is due to the fact that So, and those are the real world benefits. Okay, so that's what our final genre analyses looked like. How did we get there? A very long, complex, in fact, we've only just finished it, procedure. So I started by analysing all of them. I'm looking at the date there and thinking, my goodness, I've been doing this since 2021. And then we took a pilot, which was 6 summaries, and 4 of us, the 4 authors, analysed those 6. And then we discussed them because we didn't agree, and we came to an agreement. And once we got this agreement and refined our categories, then at that point, authors 2, 3, and 4, so that's Karen and the other 2, we divided up the remaining summaries, and they got 8 or 9 each, and then they came back to me, and I compared them, and where there were discrepancies, we discussed every one of those, So there are a couple of months then of us meeting weekly and discussing, is this or is this that, and trying to come to an agreement, which we finally did a year ago, more than a year ago, and then we used those first 32 in our first set of pedagogical materials, and that was in May. But there were huge problems, and I'm going to show you some of these because I can show you these now. And they're really problems of learner writing. Okay, a lack of clear signalling and just incorrect use of language. So that where you do a genre analysis, normally you can rely on the language being what the author saying what the author intended. Okay, but with learner language you can't. Okay, and that proved to be a huge stumbling block. Okay, so over to Karen for the results of this first 32.
So our results were complicated, as results often are, and we found some clear differences between the funded and unfunded, but also similarities. But we found enough pointers to kind of feed into the first pedagogical intervention. So that's the 3 moves: orange unfunded, blue funded. One of the differences was more use of move 3 by the funded proposals, just slightly, and more of the sequencing of move 1, move 2, move 3 in the funded proposals. So low for both, but more in the funded proposals. And previous research as a step in move 1 was a place where there was more of that, more reference to literature and understanding of what had happened previously in the field in funded applications. But interestingly, more background and a bit more on the niche for the unfunded ones. But and then in terms of move 2, again, a little bit more in the funded applications of attention to and detailing of the actual methods that were going to be used. And then a bigger difference, but also a problem here for all of the applications, or many of them, was lack of attention to and argument for the importance of what they were doing. And in the funded applications, more instances of being able to articulate academic achievement, particular outcomes and real world benefits. So far, just to broadly summarise, I'm just going to get this all on the screen because I've forgotten what it was. So in funded summaries, there's more use of all 3 moves in sequence, and more inclusion of move 3 indicating the value of the research. And for all writers, we felt as an outcome of this analysis that it's important for them to think about including these steps, this move 3, which is kind of a key distinctive move of a grant proposal. Okay. So our first pedagogic intervention was 2 online sessions in May, one covering the whole summary and then narrowing into that move 3. So a genre approach with the moves and steps and then the language related to that. And we used in this good practice examples that we had permission from the Syrian participants to use. So I think the majority of participants allowed their summaries to be used pedagogically, which is going to be quite useful in the future as well. And we also did things, so you can see a little screenshot there of a Padlet getting them to interrogate their particular research activity and try to break down the importance, the academic contribution, the potential real world benefits, and kind of have a bit of a chat about that online. Maggie,
Right,
segueing
okay.
over to you. I forgot my nice segue sentence.
Right, that's cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was as far as we could get when we had to write the abstract last September. But since then, we've been working away. So what we thought we would do is show you where we are at the moment, okay? So we then moved into round 2 of the genre analysis. So we've got our 32 summaries, which we've segmented into these communicative functional units, which I've just shown you. We did a lot of not redefinition, but sharpening the definitions of those functions. And then we had actually, by this time, gained 64 more proposals to analyse. And what we wanted to do at this point was to not just do a top-down, but also a bottom-up. So we wanted to have a linguistic analysis as well. So we used the method of Biber, Connor and Upton, and there's a really good paper by Kotos who explains the method in detail. And what we did was we did then a linguistic analysis of each functional unit, and then distinguished between primary functions, which are where you've got a whole sentence, which is all the same function, and secondary ones where you have part of the sentence, one function, and part of the sentence, for instance, a dependent clause is another function, and that would then be a secondary function. And they were all tagged, okay? So a lot more work, but what that means now is that we can use corpus software to actually retrieve each one of those moves and steps, look at the language, and so on. So just to show you, this is the same one that I showed you a couple of minutes ago, but now you can see it's got the tags PM1, that's primary move 1, step 1, which is background, and it's still pink. Okay, see how that's going there. So that's exactly the same as you saw before, but now what we can do is we can search on PM1, S1 and get all of those move 1, step 1s, and so on. And I hope it'll make it a lot quicker and easier. Okay, so what I wanted to show you, though, because I think it's the most interesting thing, is the sort of issues that we were faced with. And this is why it took us so long to do the genre analysis. First issue, signalling. Okay, now if you read the beginning of that, you feel quite happy. The importance of this study lies in, yes, okay, the ability of some types of microalgae in fresh water to what? And you get to there and you think, that's not the importance of the study. So what are we supposed to do? I was trained in the Sinclair tradition of trust the text, right? And it seems like I can't trust the text here. So yeah, having an existential crisis, in fact. Okay, so I mean, you can see the choice we made, but that was the sort of thing that we had to keep dealing with. Do we analyse it by the text? This guy has said, this is the importance of the study. We know it's not. And is that really their assumed intention? Well, we don't quite know. Okay. Are we about to take off or something? Yeah. Okay, so misleading signals. This is one of my favourites. Okay, so if you look at the however and the in addition, maybe look at the last sentence of the previous paragraph. Okay, LACs are local administrative councils. Some LACs in the area under the control of the opposition no longer receives any support or funding from the Syrian regime government, and in the areas of the north devoid of government services, right? However, okay, yeah, we know what that signals. That's signalling the niche. But is it? In conflict areas, the external environment surrounding the LACs imposes, I don't know what that's doing, provide The main services, such as education, health, water, these are good. This is good stuff. This isn't a problem. It's not a niche. And then it goes on. In addition, and all of a sudden we've got a problem. Lack of strategy contributes to increasing conflict impacts. What are we going to do with it? Well, it seems to me almost if you switch however and in addition, you get something that makes sense. Was that what they wanted? Don't know. Do we go by the signal, by the text, or do we go by the sense? And also things like, why is this happening? There's a whole pedagogical, several sort of pedagogical issues to be unpacked there. Okay, and we learned a massive amount from doing this analysis, really a huge amount. Okay, and then there's confusion of the functions. So some of them didn't really seem to know what the method was and where the method ended or something else began. Okay, so this is all under methodology. We will follow the approach of criticism and analysis in the study through, reading the sources, blah, 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 blah. And we get to number 7, and it's all under methodology, and all of a sudden we've got writing research and scientific article. And it's like, that is not the method. And we haven't been told what the research is yet. This is, yeah. So it just doesn't make sense. Again, same problem. Yeah, it's signalled as part of the method, but it's not part of the method. Should we be following what the writer wrote, or should we be following what the actual function is? Well, we went with the latter option. But this sort of thing had to be, every single one of these things had to be discussed and thought about. And then there was vague language. I mean, I just don't know what they mean. So, the first part of this is fairly clear, it's method. The study will be conducted in blah, 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 so place and this is how it will be measured, fine. And then we have this sentence, the study will also take into consideration the comparison between the social, what does it mean? I still don't know. Is this part of the method? That's where we decided to put it in the end, but it could they could equally well have meant that this was presentation of the research. You know, what we're doing is a comparison here. And then there's another one. We will also take into consideration the difference in social impact on male and female. It's almost as though they've learned this as a chunk. Oh, this is a good chunk to put in. Let's put it in a few places. That'll keep everybody happy. It's almost the sense I'm getting. So, yeah, what is it? Well, yeah. That's what we finally came up with, but it's almost your guess is as good as mine, unless we go back to the people involved. Okay, next steps. Well, research-wise, we've just finished the analysis, and so now we've got to go back and see if the 96 actually follows the same pattern as the 32, and we don't know that. And we would also like to look at the language of it. And
in terms of the next pedagogical intervention, through this last quite time-consuming and even more fine-grained in a useful way approach in the second genre analysis, we have a lot of lovely examples of participant text throwing up really interesting and rich issues, and what we're hoping to do is kind of devise tasks working with these texts and hopefully working with a lot of the people who produce them, who are still in the program and regularly apply for these grants, sometimes get them, sometimes don't, and I'm not quite sure exactly what it will look like, but you know, interrogating and reworking and talking around these examples, I think would be a really rich second phase beyond just the meat and potatoes ESP genre,
here's the genre analysis
instruction. Yeah.
So that's it. And here are the references. Okay.